Okay.
Attention, please.
Yo. 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 Yo.
Welcome to your Inspirational Astrology Horoscope for this weekend of April 26th and the 27th, 2025. I'm astrologer Dave Palmer, the Leo King, here to illuminate the collective consciousness. Hope everybody's doing wonderful out there. Make sure that you join highvibe.tv to get, of course, my daily horoscope videos just like this, my weekly deep astrology. Full disclosure, we got History in the Stars. We got so many other programs on there, plus our awesome community. Please check it out. And thanks for everybody on my Substack for making me reach number 12 in world politics as a rising, I don't even know what that means, but pretty freaking radical, especially to have an astrologer up there at the top. So appreciate that. If you want to check out more of my writing, mixing with all my wild astrology and mixing it with not just world politics, but also some pretty crazy stuff, you can check out my Substack. It's pretty easy to find, the Leo King. Well, I'm talking to you, of course, about this weekend where we have a new moon in Taurus, and this one, I think one of the more important new moons that we've had in quite a long time, even going to be more, I think, dare I say, better and more powerful than the eclipse we had last month, the solar eclipse in Aries. This has definitely been a long 5 months since really we started to see Venus start its slow down. We, of course, were in a Mars retrograde that came in December, and we saw a very rare moment in our lives. I mean, it does happen in astrology, but if you look at throughout, let's just say the last 500 years of really good astrologers, and whether you want to use, especially Nostradamus, for example, and really seeing whenever we see Mars and Venus both slow down and both go through retrogrades very close together, even more so, it's even rare and it will never happen in our lives since 1555, when we saw Mars and Venus both retrograde in opposition for as many times as it was. But there is something to say, especially when Saturn is ready to come into Aries. That is how Nostradamus started his prophecy book, was about the astrology that we are pretty much under. But it's been a long 5 months. We saw Pluto come into Aquarius. We saw Venus start to slow down. We saw Mars, of course, retrograde in Leo. And then Mars had already gone through an opposition to Pluto. Then we had this Mars opposition to Pluto while Mars was retrograde and it was in Leo. And Pluto had just come into Aquarius. And then, of course, 2 times of Venus conjuncting Saturn. And now we are just seeing Venus finish its conjunction to Saturn as Venus retrograded in Aries and had crossed over Saturn in the North Node, then retrograded back into Pisces, went over Neptune twice. And then, of course, it stopped literally on top of Saturn and has been with Saturn for 3 weeks. And finally, we're seeing on this new moon, Venus finally come off of that grip of Saturn in the North Node and getting ready as we come into, after this new moon, its ingress into Aries again, but to conjunct Neptune for the first time in all of our lives. And Mars to finish this big Pluto opposition for the first time since 1886 BC. It has been a Mars-Pluto opposition with Pluto in Aquarius that also was with Pluto in Capricorn with a Mars in Cancer in opposition. I've done those dates. Of course, I talked about this months ago, actually 5 months ago, but what this means with all these planets direct and where we're at is this new moon is literally coming in as 2 major transits with 3 hits, Mars, Pluto opposition 3 times, Venus, Saturn conjunction 3 times are coming both to an end at the same time. This North Node Saturn has been in conjunction for the last couple weeks and finally finished this week. All the planets are direct, and we finally can turn the page. This has been stagnant energy. While I know it might feel like there's been so much and it feels crazy and it feels like this world has been a lot happening, it actually really hasn't, as far when it comes to your personal life and really waiting to see what's going to be the next part of your journey. That this is the new moon that really is establishing that in Taurus. So this is going to be a very important horoscope. Let's take a look at this astrology. But again, I just want to say thanks for all the support. Especially I'm changing things up here with YouTube, doing more interviews with other astrologers. Have a lot of cool other things that I'll be announcing here soon. And just appreciate just all the love and support on the Substack, on High Vibe. And yeah, it feels good just where I'm at in my life right now, and just, you know, appreciate you all. Let's take a look. There's definitely some really interesting and I would say super badass astrology we're going to be coming into this weekend, because we have finally, I would say, made it there as far as like this new moon will be the new moon at 7 degrees of Taurus and square to Pluto. But this new moon in Taurus is the one that says, okay, we're here and it's finally time to start to change this chapter. But it's actually, I think, worse, meaning the next page. It's almost like we've been sitting and looking at the same page for the last 5 months. And just everything that's really connected to November with the Pluto ingress back into Aquarius to actually stay there. Of course, watching Mars that had just ingressed into Leo, right? Like it was like we saw the last Mars Cancer opposition to Pluto Capricorn. Like that's when you started to see Venus slow down. That's when really we've seen just so much. And of course, we also saw Neptune ingress into Aries in this 5-month period as well. Let me pull up the chat here just so I have it. All right. Yeah, it looks all right. Yeah, it looks like we are live. I don't even look. I don't even take, you know me, I'm not somebody who does takes. I just do it live and just go. Before we go to that new moon, I want to go to this Saturday right before this new moon, because the exact opposition and the final opposition of Mars-Pluto is happening on Saturday at 6:05 p.m. Pacific, 9:05 p.m. Eastern. Mars here in Leo at 3 degrees and 48 minutes, and Pluto here at 3 degrees and 48 minutes of Aquarius. Now, remember, Mars opposed Pluto when it was direct in Cancer at 29 degrees, while Pluto was 29 degrees Capricorn. Mars retrograded December, the first week, around the 6th at 6 degrees. And then finally, when it was about to come back into Cancer, as we started the new year, we had the Mars opposition to Pluto, but it was a Mars retrograde. And so we have not seen a Mars Leo direct in opposition to Pluto and Aquarius yet, meaning this one's, they all three were different. But what's even weirder is it's been 2,000 plus another 1,800, right? It's been almost 4,000 years. The weird part was when the last time that this transit happened was during, I think it's the 12th dynasty and the pharaoh that came in at that time, and the hieroglyphics changed. So the way that we communicate, the language in Egypt, but it was even more interesting because the hieroglyphic we always see of what looks like an alien spaceship, that's the dynasty. This is the transit that brought it in. It's no coincidence that as I'm speaking on a Friday right now, just days before this new moon, that the US government and the National Archives just released not all, but some of the UFO and UAP classified documents going back to the beginning of the Truman administration, going through JFK's administration, flying saucers, the pictures, the videos, the military videos from the 50s. I mean, it's mind-blowing, and we haven't even got the 70s, the 80s, the 90s yet that's coming out soon. So that's one part of all this, is like the world that we're entering into is one that, yeah, it's uncovering a lot, Pluto in Aquarius, but really this new moon energy that's coming in Taurus, we've got Uranus in Taurus. Uranus back at 26 degrees. It's back to its conjunction with Algol. The last time we saw that, while it was in direct motion, of course, was in July of last year during the attempted assassination attempt on Trump. So, of course, Mars had crossed over that, but it is interesting that we do have a Mars in Leo, another fixed sign. So just in these next, 3 weeks coming up here, possibly 4, because Mars isn't at full speed yet here, we are confronting that Uranus Algol again with a Mars. And so it's going to be wild after we get out of this new moon energy this weekend. But this Mars opposition to Pluto, it's rare because of the last time. Remember that the whole Pluto and Capricorn transit from 2008 all the way up to the very last moment of it being in Capricorn, there was no Mars retrograde in opposition to Pluto, and until that last moment, right? So, but there technically wasn't a Mars retrograde in opposition. There was Mars direct, of course, that happens every couple of years, but no Mars retrograde opposed Pluto and Capricorn. So this is a Mars that was the retrograde that opposed at the beginning of a Pluto transit in Aquarius. And so this is where the Venus-Saturn comes in as well. So Venus on the Saturday, right before this new moon, has finally made its conjunction to Saturn. It's been here for 3 weeks, because when it's stationed, it's just sat there. It's been with Saturn for way too long, but maybe it's a good thing. I've been looking at it as a good thing because it's maturity right now. Right? It's weeding out all of the values, relationship situations, self-worth issues, the patterns that just don't allow us to actually bring that more spiritual, higher, true vibe of our life into the reality better. So really it's been mulling these things over again and again and again to go, yeah, I'm not aligning with that anymore. I'm not aligning with this anymore. So I look at this new moon as really powerful, and the most powerful aspect because of these two conjunction, well, this one conjunction and this opposition, but these two transits that are finishing in the phase that they're in at the same time. And so we have to remember with Mars opposite Pluto, there's this want to really go after the things we desire. We are dealing with a lot of Aries energy. We, of course, have Neptune in Aries. That's new, right? Last time that came in for the first time was back of April of 1861. So we have to remember that, like, this is, when it comes to the world, the 0 point of Aries, the definition of this world, it's like a Mad Lib situation, but even the Mad Lib book is now not a red-headed, freckled guy. It's like this undefined person, and the title's different and everything we have to redefine in this different spiritual way. Let's not forget the North Node in Pisces is dispositing Neptune, and now it's in Aries, not in Pisces, where it's the ruler of. So we're having to really let go not only of the things that aren't spiritually in alignment in our lives, but we're having to let go of what we've attached our identity to, which you could use the term ego, but I would call this more of the identification that we've been programmed of how life is supposed to look. So that's why you're just seeing everything fall apart the way that you never thought it would, because you've been programmed to think that things would never fall apart, but everything does eventually fall apart in life or erode away. And so we're seeing the erosion of systems. We're seeing the erosion of really an important factor, I think, about the erosion of the systems is to allow people to actually have the freedom again to actually see what we can actually do in this world, opposed to being stuck on them. So I actually think that this weekend, it's weird because it's like this Venus-Saturn conjunction has finally happened, And so there's this want and need with Mars and Pluto in opposition for the first time in our lives, especially Leo with Pluto in Aquarius after being in a retrograde over it. And even with Mars slowed down, Mars still not even at full speed yet, at only doing 26 minutes. Look at Venus. Venus just also finally passing Mars in speed. Mars has been faster than Venus for 3 weeks as well. And that's not normal either. So we're finally seeing Venus overtake, but the problem with that is it makes people go, this is it. It's time to go and move. It's like one of those moments where you're right before the finish line and it's these last steps and it's like, don't blow it all up. Don't screw it all up, because this is about the new moon in Taurus. Now, this new moon in Taurus is in square to Pluto, and so I could probably put it up here, but I did make the image for this new moon energy right here, the Tower card with the Aquarius in the middle, the Pluto and Aquarius with, of course, the new moon Taurus and this Mars Leo energy. So we got 3 of the fixed signs. Of course, Pluto is the ruler of Scorpio, but there is nothing in Scorpio. And I think that it's really interesting because this really is this moment. We've done all the Scorpio work in the 80s and the 90s and the 2000s, and especially in the most current form, the biggest Scorpio stuff was the last Venus retrograde that happened in 2018 there, and retrograded back into Libra. But that was kind of the finishing touch of the stuff of the 2010s, like the Saturn North Node conjunction. Now that is done because we just had one in Pisces. So we're out of a lot of the Scorpio work, but that's where all this has been triggered since the 1980s to get us to this point, that everything in every system and every part of your life has to change from the way it was from basically when Pluto ingressed into Scorpio in 84, right? Like, and that's a weird year because it did come back into Libra, and the Leo King was born in that weird little like month and a half, and then went back into Scorpio. And that was also the last time we had 7 planets retrograde. We came close in 2023, but it didn't happen. We had 6. So what I mean by this is like the fixed energies and what we fixate on in our lives. This is a destruction of that. Now, you can't look at that as a negative. You got to look at it as a positive. You got to look at it as just like things are worn out. All these planets since 2020, especially if we think of all the stuff that was in Capricorn, everything's finally spreading apart. Saturn and Pluto, right? That has been a very weird connection. We saw that in 2020, the conjunction, but that 45-degree angle is what we're trying to get past. That's what we've been focused on, getting past that. And the reason why is because that the semi-square that we had, we finally got out of, and that's really where we're going to start to move forward. But everything's been held up because of this Mars and Venus retrograde, Mercury retrograde. And so we see Mercury on this new moon finally past where it did go retrograde. So we're past that shadow place, and we are finally moving with that. We have all these planets direct until May 4th. So this new moon happening on the 27th at 12:31 p.m. Pacific. So really, I know it might not sound like a lot, but we have a week where things are really finally starting to turn the engine of life again. It has not been running on all cylinders at all, let alone even starting up correctly. This finally is a new moon that is saying, though, in order for us to move forward, it is a new moon in Taurus. Venus is still in shadow, but it is with Saturn still, and it also is with Neptune. We see Neptune there at 0 Aries. And so Venus is approaching the first conjunction with Neptune in Aries in our lives, but also, you know, Neptune in Aries, 1861 into the late 1870s, mid 1870s. It's been since the 1870s we've even seen this transit come in. And it's going to be different because Venus is now detriment and Neptune's no longer the ruler, and Neptune's not that happy in Aries. So when it comes to even these values and the way that we look at the world and what makes us feel good, what are the value systems that we wish the world held, Do you even know what it is anymore? It's all having to be not redefined, but defined from a space where so much of it has been poppycock. So much of it has been what we were conditioned, right? This is very deconditioning the human experience that has been a lot of bullshit, right? And we've learned a lot of good things from it, but life evolves. It never stays the same. And one of the hard things, and I could be real with you all, I'm a Leo rising, Taurus moon, Mars Scorpio, Saturn Scorpio. I have so much fixed energy, Mercury, Leo, like I'm like all fixed, right? It's not easy when you're like a full fixed sign all the time because change is not easy. Now, reliability, I show up all the time, right? But when it comes to change in my life, it's never an easy thing. This is where we have to realize the change is about receiving it in order for it to be better. Uranus is in Taurus. This is also the beginnings of the end of this transit that we saw its first ingress in May of 2018. And then this new moon is highlighting a aha moment here. Like, oh, this is the 7th time I've come in and Uranus is in Taurus, right? So that's how you can tell that the sun is aware, this new moon's aware, like, wow, I've now passed Pluto with finally having that conjunction, which happened, ironically enough, the day after the inauguration, January 21st, right? The sun and Pluto finally had met in Aquarius for the first time in our lives. Then it passed Neptune, but it was like, you're at the very end, I guess you're going into Aries. That's why next year is going to be more about that Saturn-Neptune. Not just because of the conjunction, but because the sun has to be the one that says, aha. And what's interesting is this year, the sun, of course, will conjunct Uranus at the end of Taurus, but not fully at the end. And next year it will too, which is even weirder because there is this kind of moment that's where the sun is going, are we moving into this new energy or not? So maybe I'll just stay and just try and hold on to whatever this shit is. And I think that's where it's like there's parts of your life where you keep the consistency because the worth is there, the spiritual value is there, and more importantly, it's part of your divine mission. It's flowing like no other, and it's got a high value. But anything that really is the low-hanging fruit that is rotten in your life, just of like your own values, and really the things that are not taking you to really see the actual disruption in your life that actually is a positive one to lift you up to a higher and much more closer space to a more divine self. This is a positive moment on this new moon that's allowing us to accept that what comes with a better place and higher frequency is the end of a lower frequency. And also at the same time, for us now with Mercury that's been through Neptune, it went through 3 conjunctions, 2 in Pisces, 1 in Aries. So that Mercury now has the best gauge about Neptune. The sun doesn't. And it's going to meet with the sun over the weeks ahead. And so this new moon is assessing, because like every Taurus, it's going to assess if there's the asset of life, a relationship, everything. Is this a value? And it doesn't really have a full understanding, but it knows enough to go, it's kind of like when you go to your refrigerator and it's like, should we try and cook this this meat here? It's like, well, it kind of has lost its coloring. The expiration date was like a week ago. It's like one of those things where it's like, yeah, I'm not going to put all my eggs in that basket. I'm not going to put all that in that anymore. And, well, you're never going to see something new come into the fridge till you throw it away. Pluto in Aquarius is very interesting now because this is a weird world we're in. We can't be obsessed with fixing things that are beyond broken. We have to learn to accept them that they're beyond broken. Well, at the same time, we do have to set limits and boundaries about trying to also fix things that are not broken. One of the things that I noticed about Pluto and Aquarius is like everybody can be freaking out over something that's really not that big a deal, or trying to put all the minds in the world, or trying to put your own life through your own chaotic aspect. And the only gauge that's going to help you with Pluto and Aquarius is Taurus, because Taurus is like, no, it's good. The farm's good. Like, we're good. Like, I know the crop this year. I know that the greenery is good. Like, you're tripping out. We're okay, right? Like, Taurus has always the knowing of when things are okay. Whenever I want to know when the world's going bad, I look at a Taurus, because a Taurus knows right away. They have those bull's eyes that go, uh-oh, because they smell the rot. They know when the building hasn't been painted. They know when the money system's not working. They know when things are really starting more in the decay. And with the Pluto square on this new moon, it's of course not the tightest, but it is one that has had that Sun square Pluto in the middle of that T-square with Mars. So we have Mars also in square to this new moon. And so when you think about both the planets that rule Scorpio in square to this, that's what's interesting. Mars, Pluto, the rulers of Scorpio. We have Black Moon Lilith here, and that's in opposition. But what it is not being obsessed with what the endings and the decay is. It's about being like, okay, it's time for that to just naturally fall away. The big lessons with the North Node, which is our guide with Saturn here, is to mature now and be okay with things that just the universe is just allowing things to just fall away in life. Naturally just falling away. I don't think that we have to like aggressively end things. And that's where you're going to notice, whether it's in the world or in politics or in your personal life, it doesn't matter where you go. There does not need to be some, oh my God, it's dire straits, we have to end this. Like, that's when you know somebody's really not coming from a secure place. And also that Pluto in Aquarius is willing to cross the boundaries and try every crazy experiment that might go too far, or try and fix something that really isn't broke, which does even worse. And so I think that, you know, this North Node Saturn Venus conjunction, this has been a stellium that has been quite, I think, one of the most spectacle astrological transits, while we saw Neptune just move into Aries about 3 weeks ago as well. At the same token, while we've been in all this astrology for the last 5 months, I mean, honestly, I think this has been quite the time that we are going to look back and realize that nothing ever will be the same again. And the world that we always thought we knew will never look the same again. And I think that's okay. I think that we have to have a lot more faith in understanding that we have all better dreams than the ones that we've all came in our own perspectives with. Neptune in Aries, to me, with the North Node in Pisces and that dispositorship we're seeing, is one where we realize that our ego's version of dreams is nowhere near as good as what God's version is for us, and patience, and also making sure that we're not just regurgitating somebody else's dream. We're not regurgitating a dream we've already fulfilled before and just trying to live it again. That's really what chasing a high is, right? Like, you're trying to get the same feeling that you got the last time you did the drug, or you did the alcohol, or you did the sex, or you did the thing, right? You're trying to chase something. And it always ends up in some long, weird, far out corner where you feel like, oh, that really didn't do that much. So our wildest dreams are the ones that we don't hold on to yet because we don't see them, but we have to be willing to let go of the way that we want it to look. And that's in every sense of the astrology, from this North Node Saturn Venus, with Neptune also part of it, but intercepted in another sign. And then you could also mix into it this new moon Taurus and square to Pluto and Mars, redefining our lives and being willing to be courageous enough to go, what does my heart actually want here? And what is it that I have to be willing to accept that's different in order to not so much get obsessed about attaining the dream or attaining the happiness, but by living it, by being embodied in it in a new way. Meaning that this is all about new directions and new ways of doing things, and our self-worth and the way that we express ourselves now, and having a much more mature spiritual tone to it. And nobody on this earth is going through it where they don't need to grow up more and be more mature. We all are. We all can be more mature in how we're handling the way that this massive shift that we're all going through as the world is completely flipping itself to this complete new place that society has never really experienced in this big of a way, and especially with the interconnectedness of the world that we live in, ever. But, you know, there are times in astrology that it's pretty easy to see. Like, a good example is, like, we just saw the Pope die. And so it's like, well, when was the last time a Pope died with Neptune in Aries and Pluto in Aquarius? That's what I did, the two farthest planets. Oh, 1534. Oh, and it was Neptune at 0 Aries and it was Pluto at 2 degrees Aquarius. Well, look, oh, okay. And that's the same Pope that came in 1534 that started the Jesuits, but also used, you know, in many ways, it's kind of interesting because it's like, we just saw a Pope that was the first Jesuit die. So there's like this very interesting kind of weird window where society at that same time, whether it was alchemy, astrology, like the greats started to come out. Nostradamus published in 1555 his prophecies book, but also in fear of what the church would do. And they also, the King of France, after that, because he was doing almanacs, held one of his almanacs back because he didn't get permission from the church. John Dee and his amazing works throughout his cycle. I mean, I can name all of them, but you know, all that work. I mean, at least he had Elizabeth I, and it wasn't a Catholic country because of the schism that Henry VIII had done. Back with Pluto that just ingressed into Aquarius. They left the Catholic Church. But it's because of that that really the best astrology and the way the world was actually understood better was because astrology was allowed to flourish in a more mainstream way and was counseling the leaders at the time and actually made the biggest impacts because John Dee is the one who created the idea of the British Empire. He's the one who pretty much, unless you know how to really read his work, showed you the most beautiful things of how astrology is more than just your horoscope or anything like that, but the fundamental understanding of how spirit, the mystical energies, our embodiment here in this reality all form into one, and how the physical nature works and how the mystical energies of even Kabbalah work, and actually doing it and creating a monad that actually does it. And showing that all 7 planets do have glyphs that turn into one monad. And even all of his work with Edward Kelly and creating his own language and ciphering things. I think we're at this amazing moment here where your value of why you're here has not been seen yet, and that's not a bad thing. You're not late. The world was not ready for all of us as a collective to see our best. I know that's hard to hear in a moment right now where it looks like we're doing the worst as a collective. But that's kind of how the world works. And I think that that's where we have to look at this new moon as all together as humanity go, it's not just I can do better, because I think that's an old paradigm way of thinking and also viewing your value. It's more about the change, the doorway, the stargate, the portal, the planets, however you want to look at it. And even for somebody who doesn't believe in astrology that's watching this, just the events of life have finally transpired in a place to where the greatest part of why you are here, your talents, your skills, your abilities, it's time to bring them out. It's time to see what they can actually create for this world. And it's going to take courage to take a new direction. That's what this new moon in Taurus is about, and square to Mars in Leo, and that Mars opposite Pluto, and that Pluto in Aquarius, because all these 3 fixed signs have to learn to work together. And when they do, it's the wheel of fortune. When they do, it's so many other things. It's the things that actually come together to bring us the power of life. Of course, they're in the Bible as the eagle, right? The bull, the man, and of course the lion. But I use biblical as more of just astrological study than I do following it, because it's really following it for the true essence of what it is. I think that this is a moment where people are clutching to this kind of like infinite faith that they expect God to fix everything. When this is the new moon and this is the time in our lives to realize that the way that God's going to fix things is by having you show up with the baddest ass self that you've ever been and actually get to create the reason why you're here and actually become and use all the tools and use the technology that's around. And if you're afraid of technology, I think that's one of the weirdest parts about this new moon is like, most people don't follow the news that the media is not reporting, and a lot of what social media has turned into is just parroting the left and the right's favorite thing. Like the Atlas robot, just the other day, they just turned that thing to be on its own. And I'm not saying that's a good or a bad thing, but what I'm saying is like we're at a place where quantum computing and a new quantum internet with quantum computers is finally being realized, quantum chips. Everything's moving into this whole entire new technological age. But you can look at it more like a renaissance, in my opinion, than kind of this dystopian thing. There's going to be a lot of like very difficult things that move really quick here from now, and especially until Uranus comes into Gemini in July and what we see through the summer. And it's going to get really weird to digest in the fall because it's going to be about technology, things from out of this earthly understanding, but really are still in the same box, that really are going to wake up this world to all these different ways. And it's going to be through technologies, and it's also going to be how to adapt. Pluto is about survival. And what's hard is, when Pluto was in Capricorn, you had to still find a way to work and make hard choices and be responsible in order to survive. And in Aquarius, it's kind of weird because part of the survival is you have to know how to be social. You have to know how to set boundaries with certain people, but that same goes with technology. Like you have to use technology, but you have to know the boundaries of what you don't do too much with it, or are you not doing enough? That's always the big question, is kind of like people kind of get lost in, am I going to be able to be okay? Or like, can I figure this out? Or I'm just I won't use the technology, or I'm just going to run into the hills and try and live like somebody back in 1778 when Pluto was at 3 degrees of Aquarius. Like that's just stupid. Part of astrology is about helping us understand evolution. And we're at that moment where the critical mass of 2025 into 2026 that the Earth and the planets have reached of most extremes is happening, but it's what it's creating that you have to be now not so much like hyper focused on, but allowing to come through you. And also by ditching all the expectations you have on yourself. I keep thinking about this South Node in Virgo and how we're just at the beginning of this transit. And, the way that we just do our lives and our humdrum and the schedules and all these kind of things, all that's going to be changing. And in the next, year that we have left of this, you're not going to recognize what a normal day-to-day life of schedule is going to look like. We're going to rewrite that for sure over this next period. And you mix that with everything else going on right now. I mean, you can already see the writing on the wall. The writing on the wall is the world is going to change, and it's never going to look the way that it did. So the more that you try to go backwards, this Saturn and Venus and the North Node is saying, don't go backwards. Because Aquarius is about backwards, but it's kind of like taking a step back to kind of get a better view. Pisces takes a step back because it's sensitive, it's scared, it's too afraid to confront and actually get through the pattern. And the pattern is, let's just keep doing what we think works. Mix that with Pluto Aquarius, mix that with the Sun in Taurus, like I just want stability. No, we don't want stability. Stability in the same shit we've all had to live through, the lies, the world that really was never stable, the one where we don't really care about people enough, the one that we see all the atrocities around the world. We just watch the world and we watch millions of people die year after year and all these different things, from war to medical experiments to all these things, and just like literally just act like no big deal. Like that's not a world that I don't think a lot of us at the deeper core want to stay in. And it's not about having to like jump off this world. It's much more about understanding that your part in it now. It's about being more open about what your value systems truly spiritually mean to you, and being willing to weed out now the ones like, is this a program from what my family put on me? Or is this a program from what I got in school? Is this a program because I like all those movies too much? Is that a program because my friends did that and they peer pressured me into always believing into this? And again, I'm not even going into like a specific place as far as whether it's like a political thing or if it's a belief system. But there is something about the spiritual belief system. And I think that the hardest part, and of course, I am the guy that says it, and I've been saying it for a long time now, 5 years, that this would be about religion. And so, and that's going to be the hard part, is that Saturn's not going to meet with Neptune in Pisces. It's going to meet with Neptune in Aries next year. And so it's where everybody feels that the biblical truth or whatever their religious truth is going to come. And it's not. It's going to be a completely new defined world and system. And I think that's where it's like, that's a difficult one, because that's what I've said for many years. Pisces is what is the hardest conditioning, right? What is the hardest habit? And the hardest habit, more than fentanyl, more than anything, is conditioned religion. And so I think that a lot of this now is like, not so much about like you're wrong about it or I'm right. It's more about you have to be comfortable. If you still want to believe that, then you don't have to listen to me. But you're comfortable enough because that value is so near and dear truth to you, and you don't have any questions about it, and you just think that's what it is, and that's fine, but you're not trying to impose that value on other people. One of the biggest lessons about Uranus and Taurus here is like, you got to still stand up for yourself, but you also don't need to force other people to do things or to change. And I think what we see in Western culture especially is this problem with not trying to understand other people's values, and also in many ways trying to think that we are the more bigger genius and understand the values of somebody better than somebody who understands their own values themselves better. And so I think that this is also going to be one of these final points over the last 7 years of like, are you able to be comfortable with your own self-worth and values and what you put your big appreciation into, and is it really paying off? And do you have to try and like understand somebody's values in order to change them? No, you just need to be empathetic in a way, and also be a good person and just be like, hey, yeah, what are your values? And being willing to be like, I'm willing to see them. It doesn't mean you have to agree with them. That's what I love about Taurus, right? It's stubborn enough to be like, well, that's nice. It sounds cool. It's just not for me. And that's fine. But that's where it ends. Taurus is not a sign that really wants to fight over it. Taurus, that's why Mars hates to be in Taurus, because Taurus is like, it's not worth it. I got the cash, I got the crop, I already got the house, I already got the thing. I don't need to go fight. I don't want to lose all this. I don't want to go fight. That's why Mars hates to be in Taurus, right? So we have to remember that, like, even with Uranus and a sextile finishing to this Saturn-Venus conjunction, and of course this North Node, and we're going to see the Saturn and Uranus conjunction, or sextile, sorry, for this whole year. And we're going to see it in Aries and when Uranus comes into Gemini. It's one now to where it's all about how we move forward into not just the highest versions of a new world, but also the physical matter of this new world. That means it's changing on every level. And so your life is changing on every level. So instead of being in fear with the square to Pluto, I'm going to lose everything, it's all going to just disrupt everything, and I'm going to end up in some dark hole in the middle of nowhere, and because that's the fear, Pluto especially, but in Aquarius, it's the fear that you're going to be so disconnected or everything's going to break apart, when really it's more like what's breaking apart is the things that need to, in order for you to actually get to the place that's more connected, the place that has more of a way to connect to the vibrations and actually more of the humanity that you are, your greatest soul, potential, human embodied soul that you could be. But, you know, you got to get over these fears. And this courage that Mars and Leo is asking for is not one about being, you know, brash per se. Well, and I don't know why this thing just, there we go. All right, we're back. It's not about being brash, right? But it's about being secure in a way enough that it's like, hey, I'm able to express myself, but I also know that we're in this moment where a lot has to fall in order to show up. And I just have to just love who I am for what I got. And this is really narrowing the field to just like, what are the most important things that matter to you spiritually and in every other way in your life? There is so much excess waste that, you know, we don't need energetically to hold on to anymore, especially patterns, but more so even spiritually, things that really just don't serve us anymore. And so I think that this is that new moon that goes, I can be okay with watching things that at one time maybe I held on to so much that I put my happiness attachments to, that I put my way that I thought other people would see me better, because there's a lot that deals with this Mars-Pluto opposition of like, I want to be seen a certain way. I want people to accept me. I want to also, you know, have other people really see me in a way that's more than just, oh, I understand who you are, but oh, like, you're special. But it's not about being caught up in the limelight right now or being about being special. This is Pluto in Aquarius, right? This is more about like, you can't force somebody to like what you're doing. And you still got to still show up with your unique vibe and also your creative energy. And also people are inspired by people who are really truly coming from their heart, and it's not fake. So this is also where this North Node Saturn Venus with this new moon in Taurus is like, you have to embody the most authentic version of just your heart space, and one that's, you know, okay with if people like you or not, because that's not the goal. It's not the goal to do this because other people are going to like you. It's not even about a goal. It's just, hey, I'm just being my true authentic version of myself, doing the best I can for God, for the universe, for this collective. And I have all these things inside that I want to create, and I'm ready to start to go creating them. And this is where, after this new moon hits, as we come into next week, we see Jupiter finally will get to 21 degrees and get ready to come out of its shadow and really move forward and get ready to come into Cancer this solstice, as it will also be a Jupiter square Saturn that we're still in, but now in the cardinal signs, that we're really in every way moving into everything being a completely new direction, a new world. But does that mean your whole life? I think it means that for the most part, it will feel that way. But you know, you're still going to look at a mirror. You might still stay in the same house, or you might still stay in a similar job, but everything from top to bottom has to be done different, done better. Everything's getting an upgrade, whether we like it or not. And I think that the only thing that really is the downfall for anybody through this moment is not being open and not being willing to be better and to upgrade every part of yourself and your life. And being stuck in a crippling fear that you're going to lose everything, or that nobody's going to like you, or constantly also looking at what everybody's doing and trying to be what everybody is. The problem with the world is everybody's parrots now, and there's not enough, dare I say, crows that are not trying to be like the parrots and just fucking like that. That's how it's expressing itself. There's not enough. Everybody's trying to parrot what everybody else is parroting. Everybody's looking over everybody's like shoulder. Everybody's checking. And what I think this is going to be is the beginning of the death blow to social media, because now, unless it's creativity, unless it's something that really is truly inspiring, what you see through what Meta is going through in the monopoly case is in their emails. Like, the reason why they acquired Instagram in 2012 and went public was because they failed at a photo app and they knew that everybody was jumping on that. So they acquired it. Then with WhatsApp, their messaging app sucked. So they were like, oh, we can have that. But the bigger part is, what nobody's really talking about yet is in the emails. And I can ask you this question. How many people have you really added on Facebook in the last year, 2 years? We don't add people anymore in there. So we're at a place to where the social media experiment is changing into more of creative circles and creative places. And it's not going to be about like, well, everybody's on this or that. It's going to be wherever you feel you got to go on your journey. And I think that this is about the next level of what we will call society, social media, and the technology age that we live in, of ones that you go to places where you feel aligned with that's more specific to what you're doing and what you want to learn and what you want to be creating. And I think that that's where we're going to start to see more harmony come in the years to come. I would lie to you and tell you if I told you that this is the new moon that brings the harmony that we've all wanted on the planet. It's not. It's the one that begins us getting to that, though. And it might not be able to be easily seen for quite a while, but we will look back and realize this 5 months from November to now was what got us to this point where every single one of us on the conscious, I hope a lot of us are still out there aware and conscious, but on the collective conscious level going, all right, I'm ready to be my best. I don't need to follow what everybody else and everybody's trying to say, and I can have disagreements, and I have values, and let me go be something in the world. Let me go create something that really shows the world my viewpoint, who I am. Let me stop trying to have everybody see what I'm doing without, sometimes the worst is when you're trying to have people see something about what you want to say or what you want to do, but you haven't done it yet. I think this is the best new moon I've seen in a long time because it's one of the reasons why I even got into astrology, of watching the collective consciousness go through its great awakening. This is the one that goes, you can't have an excuse anymore. The universe has put you in a full surrender moment to let go of all these versions of your dreams that really are just regurgitated ones from somebody else, or they were programmed, or you've done it before and this is just like you creating this kind of like false version that you'll do it better this time and it's going to work better, when it's like, no, there's this new level. You have to take everything in your life, you have to take it to a better level, right? And it's usually the stuff we don't believe that we're able to do. And that's where Jupiter and Gemini and the square to Saturn that we've seen, of course, in Pisces comes in. Like we have to actually erase these belief systems that are very deeply embedded in us. And Saturn's actually helping us with this North Node. And even this Venus retrograde that came back in from Aries, you know, re-identify all your values about what you think a relationship should look like for you in your own kind of egoic way, all the way to, you know, every part spiritually. Are you too harsh spiritually? Like, oh, I won't date anybody that did this or does this. It's like, well, there's no forgiveness at all. Like you're just sitting alone, right? Like, or you're always in a breakup because are you too stubborn? Are you too this? Like, there's compromise on levels too that Pluto's teaching. Mars and Leo just can't be like, I'm the king and this is what I want, and everybody has to do it. That we don't live in a world that's going to work that way. Anybody doing that's going to get massive pushback, right? So this is where it's the most beautiful moment I've seen, because you have to realize you've been through more layers than I could even recite right now, just in the last 5 years alone, but just go even back to 2012. Since we had Jupiter and Gemini into 2013, that literally you've gone through a full Jupiter cycle with the most astrology that could ever happen. And it's going to continue to keep happening. But that if you could do all those layers and keep going up, why can't you get back to the surface level of how you experience this reality that does have a high conscious understanding, does have repressed things that you don't know about, does have subconscious things that you push and tuck away and try to forget about, does have this kind of side that wants to do all these badass things and show how badass you are, but also to where it's not abrasive and also to where it actually is inspiring. It can all happen now. But it's whether or not you're ready to actually let it happen, or are you getting in your own way. One of the best things that Pisces teaches us is we are the ones that are always the one that pulls ourselves out of situations that are really the best ones for us. So we self-destruct, we can self-undo, but it's also where we get in a loop pattern of where we get lost, when we're not lost, right? We create the idea that we're lost. We create the falsity that we're lost, and we're really not lost. We're just hoping that maybe the universe will give us a better sign when it already has given you a million signs. It's an excuse. So this is the end of excuses. This Venus, Saturn, and Saturn's driven home to Venus enough. Like, let's see the exaltation of that Venus. I want to really see it. And this Saturn did have big conjunctions, of course, in Capricorn with Jupiter, with Pluto. There was so much that happened in 2020, and it now really wants to help the execution of the more powerful parts of where we can actually grow, mature, and actually make these things happen, instead of it always being like, oh, well, you did your best. That's not going to do it anymore. What's going to do it is actually like, no, it's possible. And you have to get out of your rut. If you're going through mental health stuff right now, or you're going through anything that actually is holding you back, go get the help. This Pisces energy is the lesson. This North Node, this Venus, Saturn is like Saturn saying, I don't care whatever it is. It might be hard, but asking for that surrender moment in your life to go, okay, I'm surrendering. I'm just going to stop being upset about it, or I'm going to stop being afraid to get the help that I need. You have to not push through. You have to go through instead of pushing through. You just have to go through and just, all right, let me stop this pattern by actually disrupting, by just not continuing on the same hamster wheel anymore. And that's my fear, is that a lot of the collective and all of us have some sort of a hamster wheel in our life that we keep doing because we want to keep everything running smoothly, and we want the trains to keep running smooth, even though the trains aren't running smooth. So you have to look at everything now as like everything has to be changed in every kind of way, and it's going to change whether we like it or not. So you might as well accept that, because I think that this is really the point of not expectation, but exception, and the accepting of things. And that's where things will come towards you. It's about learning this new mastery that's really the master that has to become the master in many ways. And we're able to see in a different way now the world. We're able to feel that everything does feel off because it's no longer got the same power or juice to feed it anymore, because it's just going to be naturally, I hate to say die off, but it's just naturally not going to be having power from the universe anymore. And there's a great power source that we have to be willing to see that's built within us, that was given to us by the Creator, and we also accepted by coming down here, that has never been turned on. A new power source within ourselves, a new value system within ourselves, and one where a collective of the humans that have the courage on this planet to stand up and actually, instead of just talking's part of it, but the bigger part is creating and doing something about it. And actually, the more that you get lost, per se, in actually doing something and creating something that's never been done, following the ideas of an original soul, more than just an original thought, you are going to start to realize that starting after this new moon, coming into this week that follows this new moon, that the engine's turned on for that, and really your 2025 begins. It hasn't began yet. You've been through a year where there has not been a year. It hasn't even been defined. It's just been a long carryover of 2024. An even longer carryover of 2023, a longer carryover of all the way going back to really when Jupiter, Uranus conjuncted and Neptune ingressed into Pisces in 2010 through 2011, when all those planets changed. And then 2008 with Pluto that ingressed into Capricorn. That really, this last 17 years, and then going back 18 years with the North Node with Saturn now, that's highlighting where the North Node was in 2006. You've done it. It's now time for the next round of everything. And it has to be all about this maturity. Anybody who's going through their Jupiter returns right now or Saturn returns, I think have to pay attention the most. So those that are like 28 and a half, 29, 30, those that are 20, 12, 24, 36, 48, 60. Like if you start going into those cycles with the Jupiter Saturn squares that we're in still, like, you know, these are big moments in your life where you've got to believe and you've got to take that mastery better. We all have to do that, but you know, for those people, these are those moments where you are making the biggest shifts of your life. Whether you like it or not, it's happening. And it will impact those people the most. But all of us are going to be impacted in major ways, because I know we all have some big planetary transit happening. Every single person on the planet does. We're all dealing with a hard aspect to one of these three outer planets: Uranus, Neptune, and Pluto, right? We're all dealing with, some of us are dealing with all three, some of us are dealing with two, some of us are dealing with one. But it doesn't matter. We're all dealing with this whole entire carryover of the outer reaches of this universe, the more inner part of this universe that's shifting all at the same time. And let's not forget that when Mars finally crosses over Pluto on Saturday, that now all the planets are not within 180 degrees, and Mars can start to lead the way in Leo towards a place where go live your life from that creative place. Go live in a much more positive zone. Don't be letting the world dictate if you're going to be happy or not, or what the news says, or whatever. We learned this lesson in 2020 with the North Node in Gemini, with the Saturn-Pluto conjunction. That was sitting there with Jupiter-Pluto. That was 3 times in Capricorn. Like this, like what? You're not going to have a good and happy life because what? The tariffs, or because of this, or because of that, or because, you gotta, now that Mars is going to be done with this opposition, now we're not stuck with all the planets on one side. Mars now comes to the other side and starts really showing us. It's interesting too in the heliocentric chart. I did this for Monday after the new moon, but we have Neptune that's finally coming to the end of Pisces. And remember, there's no retrogrades in heliocentric astrology. And we have Jupiter that also is coming to the end of Gemini. And so we're starting to see the Jupiter-Neptune square, and both getting ready to make their ingresses in the weeks ahead into new signs. And we also have to remember that we collectively on Earth in the geochart are getting ready for a Jupiter-Neptune square, just as much as we're going through Jupiter-Saturn square. Saturn's still there back 23 degrees and 40 minutes. That's why, you know, next year is more of a big deal when Saturn comes into Aries to conjunct Neptune in February of 2026. It's also helio-wise when we start to see Saturn ingress into Aries. We also are seeing, you know, Mercury back around to cross over all these planets over the next, you know, 40 days. So the next 40 days are going to be really powerful after this new moon, because that Mercury is going to cross every planet, right? It's been in no man's land for the last 44 days. So the last month, including the 5 months, has been a dead zone, without it being a true dead zone, but feeling like the page isn't really turning, and having to kind of re-look at it and re-mull over everything. And what's on this new page is more blank than defined, even though the irony is it's defined because it is a page, meaning it was meant to be written upon. But this is where you can write your greatest story. This is where you can actually be the best version of yourself you've ever been. But it's whether or not you're willing to get rid of what you've always thought it should look like and what you think the world should look like. And that's where the hardest part of this Neptune heliocentrically, and of course it's still coming back into Pisces geo-wise this fall, and will come back into Aries, of course, at the beginning of 2026 after this fall. But we still are dealing with Neptune at the very end of Pisces. That there is this illusion, and the illusion is everything from the media. Everything from the media. Right? We're going to get our truth by the divine and by those that we experience the beautiful essence of this universe with others with. When you go and when you are with other people, magical things happen. Being alone, we're moving into an extroverted world, not an introverted world anymore. And I think that people have to really start, I've been saying this for a long time, but like this is going to be this week where that really starts to be loud. The world's going to be loud as When any big changes happen, and this is the biggest change to ever happen in our lifetimes, and I would say 500 years, and then I would go even back all the way to when Saturn and Neptune met at 0 degrees of Aries, all the way back 6,000 plus years ago, right? That it's going to be loud because it's a completely new tower moment for the world, and you can't look at that as like a scary thing. You have to look at it as this is the moment where this trinity of power of our value systems, our fixed nature of our heart, our fixed nature of, it's kind of like the yellow brick road. It's a little Oz-like. We're in Neptune at the end of Pisces, right? But there is no great Oz out there that's trying to fool us except ourselves. And I think it's the power of our heart, the power of society, and the boundaries, and knowing what, you can't force people. You have to know when you have to put a boundary up with certain people and so forth. And same goes with technology, but also our values that are needing to realize how powerful and strong of the bull that we are more than we actually realize, and we can raise that to a higher bar with Uranus. And so that full moon that comes in 2 weeks in Scorpio is going to be really interesting because, of course, that opposition to Uranus, and we're going to see quite a lot as we come into halfway through this spring now and into this summer, where we see Jupiter, a new moon, and so forth by the solstice and the big squares to Saturn and Neptune. We also have Saturn, by the way, that this is the new moon that's making it really interesting, because if today's the 27th, yeah. So Saturn is less than a month and away from ingressing into Aries, right? So we have to remember too that we are on the exact kind of like lunar cycle calendar, this next 28 and a half days of exactly by May 24th and the 25th, when Saturn ingresses into Aries at 0 degrees. So that new moon in Gemini, that's a month from now, is Saturn in Aries. And so that's also us starting a really massive different way that the world works and so forth. But the 0 point changes everything. Saturn in Aries redefines how the world is, but especially when you follow the patterns of Saturn in Aries. And for those that dare to go look at all the work I've been doing for the last 5 years on High Vibe and go through all the hypergates and all that stuff, this is not a traditional just basic Saturn ingress into Aries. This is one on how Nostradamus did his prophecies. This is how you really do the work, and this is changing everything forever. This is the biggest one to ever come into our lives for 6,000 years. And so you're at that precipice. This is the new moon that also reminds yourself it's not just go time, but it's also, holy cow, 1 month from now, all these things can be possible, and I can start to create those things, and it will look completely different, your life, in the next month. Things will be easier to define, and we're going to have troubles by the fall again. And I think this fall into winter, like I've said many times again, is going to be very difficult because we're going to go back to some of these old things and thinking, did I do the right thing, or is this the right thing? And yes, it is. It's not about going backwards. It's about going forward. And boy, is it unknown what it looks like forward. But what is known is your amazing value and power that is so extreme. I will say, just because I am on public YouTube, I do my new moons and full moons public on YouTube, but I've been saying this on High Vibe, but I haven't said this out public yet. But I've been tracking through this whole Venus retrograde, the ascending node of Venus and the America asteroid, and they are about to both conjunct Uranus. And that's what this next 2 weeks will be about after this new moon. Financial system wise, the government, the whole way, this whole entire American thing is the big what the fuck is coming. So be prepared. And I don't think we need to be scared, but it's one of those things to where knowing your worth, knowing your value, and knowing, honestly, Taurus is the toughest of all signs. It's Teflon if you're willing to have that value where nothing, you have to know how worthy you are to be here and to do the great things that you came here to do, that you always have what you need. God will never put anything in front of you that you can't handle. And I think everybody should say that as I'm not a big person that believes in, getting lost into, say the mantra every day or something. But, it's more of like one of those things that I always know whenever it feels crazy. I always go, I know God's not bringing this into my life and I can't handle it. And I think that's the best part of what Taurus is that you can handle it. That bull can handle it. That bull can get through anything, but a bull can't also get through the world alone. Hence, if it falls down, it needs a crane. It needs other people. It needs actually human beings, Aquarius, to pick the bull up. Other bulls can't do it. And I think that we have to remember that this is a time where we also have to understand that you just can't be a lone wolf, right? We have to start coming together. We have to start breaking bread in ways that we've never broken bread before. And there's going to be a lot of people who don't want to do it. And that can't make you give up, because there's going to be a lot of people who are just going to be like, no, I don't want to. I don't like your values. I don't like this. And if you get stuck into that, that's where, anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, every kind of phobia comes from. And we're going to see that get crazy on all fronts, because the only war that we should be terrified of is going to be a religious war, which is what I've said for years. And if you look around, it's exactly what's happening. I appreciate you all very much. Many blessings on this new moon. Remember, it's a balsamic dark moon up until Sunday. So I would use this weekend to not do anything stupid and let this Mars Pluto with, there could be extreme violence. There can be extreme bombs. I mean, they just did in a lab a black hole bomb. Not even kidding. Just a day ago. But we got to be, not getting stuck into the desires of this kind of carrot that's kind of being floated in front of us, just as Venus and Saturn have finished. And we have to finish this Mars Pluto on Saturday. So I really, I'm talking on a Friday night, but really, the Saturday evening is not one to throw two sheets to the wind and just say, fuck it, I feel better, let's go for it. No. Not the night before. We really are getting on the next page, and the page that we've been waiting for. And we have to remember that it's not about protecting ourselves from like laziness, but I know it might feel like I've had no break, but Pisces is because you're just mulling over things and you're watching things that aren't working just fall apart naturally, and then trying to hope that you can figure out a solution to it. But it always kind of, Pluto and Aquarius will always come up with like, well, I don't know, the equation kind of doesn't make sense. And that's learning the lesson of like, that's the boundary, let go. So let's say you're somebody and that you're single and like, you're like, this equation with this person, it doesn't work. It's like, let it go. The only way a relationship will come in your life is when you have disconnected energetically from it. Stop thinking about it. Like, you don't have the answer. That means, okay, just let it go. That's the boundary. The equation doesn't make sense anymore. Like, there's so much right now that can really be mitigated to make your life so much easier by you not trying so hard, by going against yourself. But what is going to happen after this new moon is, this is where you do light those tires and you do fucking go for it in life. And we don't have a lot of time, because of course we were going to see Pluto retrograde by May 4th. Now that's never been something that I think stops us from creating. It's really the Saturn retrograde, but we do have Saturn getting ready to come into Aries, and we got to finish the Saturn Pisces for this next, lunation of this new moon. And I think a lot of it is going to be like letting go of things that really are just attachments and values and that are really spiritually not good for us. And how do we really break bread with others better? By getting out of our own way and our expectations of how we want everything to look in the world. Of course, we have to understand boundaries with people, but make sure that you still have that part of the door that's open to still meet and to still, work through things and to talk with things and find more common ground, before that you're just closing every door, unless it's like extreme boundaries that really are not human in nature at all, right? It's definitely, I think, much more of an intense moment than might be reported by a lot of people out there right now. That this is about to be what will be like a train that will never be where we ever were again. And that's life. But we always feel like we can really kind of associate with similarities in the world. It's kind of like if you drove by the house you grew up in, it doesn't even feel the same anymore. You can drive by the park you grew up in, it doesn't feel the same anymore. You can drive by every Pisces memory you've had, and this, no matter what, the nostalgia kind of is missing because the universe is asking for you to go create nostalgia for the future. I appreciate you all. Please join me on highvibe.tv and of course my Substack, which is blowing up right now. I appreciate all that. But all my main stuff, of course, is on High Vibe TV. Truly appreciate it. Much love to you all. I'll see you on the next one. Adios. Bye-bye.
Attention, please.
Yo. Okay.
Attention, please.